I think we can. Let's get this meeting started, y'all. I think we have quorum. Let's see. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and I'm going to read our statement at the beginning of the meeting. The Equitable Housing Strategy Subcommittee meeting has now commenced. It is April 25th at 1:30 p.m. This meeting is being held virtually. For those who are participating remotely, we ask that you mute yourselves until called upon to speak to avoid feedback and background noise. For those who have dialed in using the call-in number, to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone, and then you only use the chat function to request to speak. Prior to speaking, please announce who you are to identify yourself. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. Also, to comply with the state open meeting law, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio. And with that, I will do the roll call. Lori Meserbo,
Present.
Ray Wench,
Present.
Kenny Wong,
Present.
Jay Young, that is me, and I'm here. Vicky Cusino is not here. And Tisha Tallman, also not here. So with that, I do believe we have quorum. Thanks for joining, everybody. And moving on down the agenda, number 3 is the City of Tucson Office of Equity update. I don't see anyone here from the Office of Equity. So I will move on to the City of Tucson HCD update. Neto, is that you or?
I can, or I can punt to Lena. But Lena, do you want to mention the P-chip, and
Yeah.
then I'll mention South 10th.
Yep. We're happy to announce that we kind of launched our community engagement for P-chip just this week. So the survey has been launched as well as our website. Our first kickoff for P-chip will be a week from today on Thursday, right after the commission meeting. We will have a virtual meeting on May 14th, and then another in-person meeting on May 23rd at Donna Liggins Center. So, and the one next week is at El Pueblo. So I will put the links to the P-chip website as well as the survey in the chat. But yeah, the survey's been open for about 24 hours and we already have 100 responses. So doing pretty well one day in. We're going to be at Ward 1's Dia de la Niñas event on Saturday. So we're hoping to do quite a bit of outreach at that event. But yeah, so that's our P-chip update right now.
Thanks, Lena. As I mentioned to Lena, most of the 100 survey respondents are my homies and my cousins.
Hey,
So,
you take what you can get, right?
Right. But on that note, we encourage you, we ask you to take the surveys and share the surveys and the outreach plan within your networks. Encourage people to attend if they can, at the very least, fill out the surveys. So we appreciate it, commissioners. On May 9th, Thursday, HCD will host a public meeting at Southside Presbyterian Church on South 10th Avenue, just south of 22nd Street, to further community engagement on the proposal to build housing on the 12 acres of city-owned land across the street from Southside Presbyterian. At the meeting, which will also be co-hosted by Ward 1, Councilmember Santa Cruz will be present, and will make several presentations at the outset, and then break into workshops focusing on specific issues and subject matter for the community. And that's 5:30 May 9th at Southside Presbyterian. And I'll send out an item to the commission. And we encourage people to come. Although we are focusing on neighborhood residents, we have sent out postcards a quarter-mile radius to, what is it, Lena, 400 some addresses?
Yep.
Given that this project, it will affect more than just the immediate Ochoa Barrio Santa Rosa community. This is a citywide, this has citywide implications. And so we're encouraging people to attend our session for some wonderful Q&A. So that's what we have right now, Jay.
Great, thank you, Neto and Lena, for those updates from HCD. And that takes us quickly into what I would say is kind of the meat of what we're going to be working on today, and I think the next couple of months. And that is number 5, the work plan for April, May, and June. And I think kind of where we are as a group is, as you can see under the bullet points on the agenda, for number 5, identifying pressing housing equity issues in Tucson and in Arizona, and looking at solutions, in Tucson and in Arizona, and examples of equitable housing policies and strategies. And I think centering the Prosperity Initiative, or making sure that at least what we're doing and thinking about is connected to that. Identify our top priorities as a subcommittee, and finally develop recommendations for CEHD and mayor and council. Before we jump into this, I did want to ask if somebody would be willing to take some notes for the meeting. I kind of struggled during the meeting to lead and both take notes, or we could kind of collaborate all together, but I would love to be able to get some notes out of the meeting, at least some of the high points, so that we can kind of keep track of what we're doing from meeting to meeting, because I also do lose track of, from month to month. So would somebody be willing to take notes?
I can take notes. I didn't take notes on the initial things, but I could make a Google Doc if others could drop in the announcements that you've already made.
We'll send you some information, Ray.
That would be great. Thank you so much, Ray. I just always really, really appreciate somebody willing to take notes. So thank you. I appreciate that. What I also want to do before we kind of just get into a discussion and move these issues forward, I just wanted to give a little bit of background and context, particularly for you, Ray and Kenny, just because we've worked on this as a subcommittee some already. And anyway, I just want to give some context before we get into it. One of the things that I did want to just kind of raise at the beginning is that I think that we've really struggled as a subcommittee to kind of figure out, with such a big topic where there are, so many things to identify in Tucson, and then there's so many things being done in other places that could be effective here potentially. And also having provided, I think pretty clearly some guidance and at least some, expressing the need to really measure equity now and to be able to measure it in the future. We've really been wrestling with these things already. And I think what has really been a struggle is, based on kind of how large this is, what can we reasonably do as a subcommittee, in terms of research and highlighting things, and, just the amount of time we can spend between meetings, and what it is actually maybe we should be doing in terms of, putting requests forward to the city or to the full commission for things to actually get done. So I'm just thinking about, like, again, measuring equity, or, creating a more holistic report to kind of anchor the work going forward. Obviously, we can't do that, but how do we get from where we are as a subcommittee to actually, moving the needle both at the full commission level, and then also, seeing things happen in the city to, start to change some policies to make housing in particular more equitable. And I guess I bring with this a little bit of frustration, because I do think that, we have really tackled these issues. It's just, getting any action to be taken or getting it to, to have teeth. So I want to just kind of create that framework and context as we get into this discussion, just to think about, what is our capacity, what really should we be doing, and then how can we, move this forward in a way that actually has an impact. And we actually did at one point, I think it was February of 23, we did recommend to the full commission that we refocus CEHD's work on equity issues, including desegregation, gentrification and displacement, housing instability, and other related topics as determined by the commission. The next part was, as a first step, we suggest revisiting and revising our shared language and definitions of equity in plain language that can be easily understood and used by all. And we would like to create a visual representation of the equity issues framework that we are using. And then the final part of what we brought to the full commission is that we would like to engage with the mayor and council in ongoing dialogue about the equity issues that we are focusing on. We will listen to mayor and council to understand their constituents' housing concerns and educate mayor and council about equity issues that our commission is working on. But that didn't really go very far, obviously, and I think that that's really kind of where the last kind of major thing that we brought forward to the full commission. So with that kind of context, I guess I'd like to start by opening up the discussion just to see what we want to do over these next couple of months, and kind of what work product do we want to hopefully have by the end of June or July, and kind of how we're going to make that progress from meeting to meeting. So again, I know we've talked some about this already, but I think, at least for me, that seems like the place to start. But of course, I'm certainly willing to kind of let this conversation go where it needs to go. So with that, I'd like to open it up and get a conversation going.
Just clarify, Jay, what you are reading right now, those were the priorities we developed in the subcommittee meeting, is that right? After the retreat?
The thing that I just read out loud?
Yeah.
That's actually from what we came up with as a subcommittee back in like February of 23. So it actually predates that. So obviously there is some consistency in what we've been talking about, at least, I guess.
Great, thank you. Do you have those written down that you could send too, or a link to that?
I do.
Great, thanks.
I can email that out to you guys right now.
I guess I shared the same question. A lot of it sounds very like I would support those things, figuring out, essentially coming up with a framework of here are some of the areas we think city/mayor and council could address. And I know some of the resources, Jay, that you had shared around too before the meeting, they did seem to cohere around certain themes. And so I found that very useful. Just what are some specific areas of action that could be targeted, and as well how they link to some of the historical or broader questions around equity that this group's interested in.
Mm-hmm.
All that to say is I think we could do a good job of kind of making those connections and again, like kind of impressing the importance of those.
Kenny, how do you think that what would be a good way for us as a subcommittee to go from the resources that I've shared, the resources that everybody else probably knows about, that's also bringing to the table, like how do we get from there to kind of what we're presenting or proposing to the full commission? How do we do that exactly, I guess? Do you guys have any thoughts about that? Because that's what I struggle with, I think.
Well, I think one way that was, at least it felt very present to me, was just kind of, structuring some of the information that's out there. There are, I think, what you were saying about common definitions, and sharing some of the same language around things, I think we can I'm kind of imagining just a matrix of things, right? Here's let's say gentrification as a topic, or home values as a topic. And here are some ways that we've seen examples around. And here are in the next column, some strategies that we've seen or picked up from other places. And even kind of that exercise of deliberating what those connections are for us. How realistic do they belong in this conversation? Just kind of vetting what this matrix looks like and organizing it together. I feel like that would be a valuable exercise just for us and to share with the larger commission as well.
So let's say that we do that. I think that makes sense to me. So from today and with like the remaining time we have, which obviously we've got a decent amount of time, what are the things that we should try and accomplish today? And then what is it that we want to be doing individually between now and the next meeting to build on that progress? Is it like, do we all need to commit to, I'm just totally thinking out loud here, but like, do we all need to commit to looking at 5 of the resources that I shared, or 5 other resources that seem relevant, and then kind of all getting together and putting those on the table and figuring out what pieces or elements we want to take? Again, I'm just thinking out loud, like, what are the actual steps to get from here to there?
I wonder about things that are Tucson specific. I know we talked at the retreat some reparations focus that are specific for the way that the city of Tucson has been involved in harm around housing segregation, and the disparities that continue to play out today. And I would love to see us working more closely with the Office of Equity to be, and other people who are already doing this research, not for us to do this research ourselves necessarily, but to be pushing forward, like there should be that investigation into the harm done and ways of the city taking some accountability and repairing that harm.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some of our role could be looking at places where there have been some reparations programs of other forms.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that makes sense. I think one of the things that I also think about is that, how much time should we spend getting too much into the weeds versus basically, because I mean, it's like one of those types of things where I'm like, are we just really overthinking this? I mean, could we just like literally today be like, here are 5 things that we know are problems in Tucson. Other communities that are really looking at equity are addressing these issues. The city of Tucson needs to create a report with the measurements by X date, and we can advise on that, because it's like, I guess that's again kind of back to where my struggle is. It's like I just am maybe worried about how much we can actually do in terms of like getting into the weeds and providing the framework, just with the nature of how we're set up as a group, how often we meet, and the way that we meet, because we're going to be talking about, I think, doing a decent amount of work between now and the next meeting, which I know for me is challenging. And then with the hour and a half we have, is that a realistic way to go about it? And maybe it is. I'm not saying that to provide my opinion about it. It's just, again, wondering about the logistics of this, and kind of what we want our work product to be.
I mean, want others to chime in too. But I mean, Jay, what you had suggested, even like, read 5, find 5 or something like that. And then we kind of categorize together, I think that historic engagement is like one theme that we could have. I see, Jay, from what you had shared already, like home values as another theme. So, if there's a way that we could probably set up a working document that we could start to contribute, things that we find in different places, or, take ownership of a certain kind of area within this matrix. I feel like that would be effective. And I know it's a struggle between meetings to, kind of parse a lot of information. But I think if we just start with what we're familiar with, that can already be effective. And I see, like, in some ways more is more, right? The more that we can add and push it as far as we can take it, the more effective that it can be.
I like that. What do others think about that approach? Kind of the, like, maybe take 5 for between now and the next meeting, and be ready to come back and just start categorizing and kind of organizing our thoughts just based on what we've read and kind of perused between meetings.
Hey, Jay, this is Mike.
Oh,
I
yeah, go
was
ahead, Mike.
just kind of catching, I was going through my personal notes, and apparently, I probably don't have all my stuff updated, but I remember we changed the name from housing desegregation to what we are now, EHSS. And I was just looking through, let me flip back to this on my notes. I was looking through some of the notes I made when we were back when we were HDS, and we had discussed, and I'm reading this off as I wrote the notes, addressing housing segregation by race, ethnicity, ethnicity, disability, and access to opportunities in Tucson. So has that the consideration or that guide or those intentions changed? Have we come up with another statement or paragraph for this current subcommittee?
We have not, I don't think, come up with another paragraph, but what we did do over the past few meetings is we did review the goals for the subcommittee. That was part of the work that came out of the strategic planning meeting that we did in person. And what was that, January or February? And we did go over those. So we do have the three goals that we went over for the subcommittee. So I think that probably is, I think, maybe what you're talking about, or at least kind of in that same realm. Does that make sense?
It is. Yeah. This sound what you just said makes absolute sense. I just haven't copied them over to my notes, the sheet I have open when we have these meetings. That's
Got it.
what's good.
And there was conversation this week between the facilitators and Jim and myself and Neto and others to make sure that at the next, I believe the next meeting, that we're going to solidify those goals. So I did send forward what I thought that we had come up with. So if in the next meeting, when we go over those goals, if there's something that I missed or is not quite right, that would be our chance to kind of get them. Not that we couldn't do that again, but I do think it is a good point though, Mike. I think that the goals that we came up with do basically kind of lead us to the point we're at now. So I do think that it's important to remember that those are kind of sitting at the top of the page, in terms of the work we're doing.
So just to clarify, we're gonna read some of the articles and then we're gonna apply what we read to Tucson, and then make decisions from there about what we bring to the fuller council. Am I following correctly?
That seems right to me, Lori. And I guess also, to put a finer point on it, I guess what I was thinking was that as we're reviewing materials, whatever kind of materials, either ones that I've shared or, that we come across otherwise, is trying to distill down based on kind of what we're reading, like what we think are the pertinent things here that we need to address. At least that's kind of what has come to my mind, and kind of how to get the city of Tucson going down that road. Does that at least that's what was in my mind. Is that, Ray and Kenny, what about y'all?
Uh, I'm gonna put in the chat, I guess, just back to uh, the retreat notes. Oh, okay, and Ray's got, I think, the final version as well of what we've looked at.
And that first point on it is, I think, exactly what it sounds like you're suggesting here, both Jay and Kenny, is we said we would gather, share, and maintain research about equitable housing policies and advocacy. It seems like that's something that's a theme that keeps coming up that we say we want to do. I love the idea of doing that. And then having people get to pick an area of interest too. Like, I'm particularly interested in city-based reparations. I'd love to do some research on that. Of course, would be happy for other people to do that research too, especially if people already know some resources. But I'd be happy to do that between now and the next meeting.
Yeah, that's great. And I think also, you know, the way that I was kind of thinking about it as well is that, you know, I feel like what I'm able to do based on kind of our position as the commission and just, you know, all of the things is that, you know, we're trying to raise things that are probably important, that the city should probably look at. It's not, I don't think we can get to a place where we're like, you know, we reviewed these 20 different areas and we've narrowed it down to just these 7, and, you know, the city should move forward in X, Y, and Z. To me, it's more about, you know, kind of almost a menu of things that we've come upon that, like, you know, are equity issues either that we know here in Tucson exist or may exist and require more research, but you know, just kind of bringing that to the fore, so that we don't have to be too I don't even know what the right word is, but too narrowly focused, I guess, or think that we've got to get to this place that's like we're really certain about before we kind of move stuff forward. Because I do think that, like, again, you know, there are very clear examples out there of kinds of, you know, studies and reports and you know, reviews of what other cities are doing in this space. And it's, you know, the cities are taking those things on. It's not necessarily committees like ours. So, you know, how are we getting the city to take action on these things that we're kind of bringing forward that, you know, in all honesty, are pretty obvious in a lot of ways, which is kind of why I go back to, like, you know, are we just overthinking this here? But I do think, yeah, the idea of kind of distilling things down that we're coming across and discussing them and kind of getting them into some sort of order. Yeah, go ahead, Ray.
Oh, no.
Oh. Does that answer your question, Lori? I feel like I kind of went on there maybe a little longer than your answer. So, you know, the other thing that occurred to me as well is that I wonder if this is I mean, looking at some of the other equity studies, I know that they've been city university partnerships, and I just wonder if, Kenny, this wouldn't be ripe for Arches to take on, or Drachman through Arches or something like that, since I feel like that's the kind of research and work in particular that Arches is looking to do.
Yeah, I think there's clearly a lot of connections, and I don't know. I'll have to keep thinking on like what the right vehicle is through, you know, both the Drachman Institute and Arches. You know, they're set up uniquely, and I think the capacity kind of differs between both. But again, there's a lot of overlap and shared interests. So I don't know. You know, we have looked at the whole commission, you know, the Tucson equity study from a few years back, a number of times. And I think those continue to be good resources. And you know, I would love to see our university kind of in our college play a part in advancing that too.
Yeah.
Could you explain what Arches is?
So our Arches is a partnership between a number of universities to advance housing research with a particular focus on Hispanic communities. And so it's a HUD-funded research center that's being established. We're kind of in the early stages of setting up like the real presence for the center online, and you know, just I've had a few events to get things rolling. But I guess the rub of it is, you know, as part of what's being funded is a set of defined research projects already. So there's about 19 different projects that, you know, went into the proposal to secure the funding to carry them out. So we kind of have an agenda established for the first few years. But I think this long-term value and sustainment of the center and what work it can continue to do with this collaboration with ASU, NAU, and University of New Mexico. You know, we're looking for avenues to continue and take on new research work as well. So I think that structure is it's sort of, you know, you know, we've kind of got our work cut out for us to put a point on it for the next few years. Yeah, so I don't know if that's the ideal vehicle, even though, you know, we have this partnership as well with SWFIC. And yeah, I think it may be a longer term kind of goal through that body. But I also know, you know, within our programs at the university that, you know, there are class projects, there's research that students are interested in doing as well. And I wonder if those might be some of those vehicles that we can use to focus in on Tucson a little bit more as well.
Could you share the list of 19 projects that were selected? Is that something that's available? And is that mostly Tucson based, the research that's going to be taking place?
You just muted, Kenny.
Yeah, that's a great question. I can share sort of a like this 2-page summary with everyone that we've composed. You know, we don't have a website set up yet, so it's been you know, just some summary documents so far. But that a lot of it is kind of you know, part of the overall award. A lot of it is focused up in Phoenix, you know, and based off where the research faculty are. So there's a project in New Mexico, up in Flagstaff around NAU, and a few researchers down here at the U of A.
Thank you. I was wondering, as we're compiling resources, like what things have already been done. And so we think, I know Jay, you and I had talked about this a while ago, that there was a lawsuit that the city of Tucson was included in for discrimination. Is it discrimination in lending or discrimination housing against Black and Latino families? And out of that lawsuit, some grants were given to local Tucson nonprofits, including a small one to the Southwest Fair Housing Council, if I understand that correctly. And I wonder what role like the city of Tucson might also play in that. Like, what has the city of Tucson's role been within this, and how we're doing our own sort of reparations without needing to have the lawsuit. I'm not sure if there have been other lawsuits from individuals of families who've experienced displacement, who've experienced the impact of unfair lending or unfair, I don't know a better word than redlining, but exclusionary act.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. I think, you know, making sure that we're kind of focusing on, you know, some of the things that are happening locally as opposed to, you know, just focusing on things that are far afield. But yeah, kind of gathering those things, I think, would be a good part of what we do over the next few months. Okay, I mean, I feel like we've got a pretty decent plan to move forward. Why don't we talk about a couple of the things that maybe some more specifics about what specifically we want to do between now and the next meeting. I know that we kind of have on the table of like, picking 5 things or bringing 5 things to the table, reports, articles, whatever I guess folks think would shine some light on, you know, equity issues, kind of broadly things happening in Tucson, um, policies that maybe are put into place, examples of, other reports that are highlighting equity issues and solutions, just general things like that. Um, I was looking at one of the documents I put together that I believe I sent out to everybody when I was sending stuff out, over the past few weeks. But the document's called Assessing and Measuring Equity, and there are several reports and links on there. I'm just wondering if it would be useful to get more specific now to kind of put some things on people's plates to just go ahead and know that, okay, between now and the next meeting, here are the few things I'm going to look at, or do we want to just do that individually? I'm just wondering, what do you all think that, again, now that we've kind of talked this through, is there anything else that we can do now in this meeting to, get us a little bit closer to next meeting and provide more clarity? If there's not, I mean, maybe people are clear enough at this point, but what do you guys think we need to do right now to move the ball forward?
Under Lori, we haven't heard from you yet very much this meeting. If you have any thoughts about this so far.
No, I'm going with the flow. If I had thoughts, I would share. I mean, I guess we could look at the articles and just decide who's going to look at what, so we don't all look at the same thing.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if like that would be useful. I mean, it may or may not. What, Ray and Kenny, what do you all think about anything else that we should do in this meeting to make sure we're clear, or to maybe save us some time for next meeting, to get to next meeting?
I like the idea of like, yeah, maybe figuring out where some of those themes are. Ray, I hear you talking about reparative policies and, kind of what's been documented around the city and engagement with, different actions in the past, so that could be a set of documentation. I think, Jay, what you've shared, it kind of both covers, like, again, this idea of indicators of equity, and then, we could all contribute to that, of what are some markers that we're noticing as we go through materials. And then just this idea of like home valuation, right, as one legacy and appraisals and equity that people have in their homes. And so I don't know, we could find some ground through there. Like, yeah, here's where we individually might be heading. And if we each come across or find more things that plug into those, we kind of know where to slot them, and we could figure out, okay, does this cover all that we're interested in, or if there's more that needs to be added to this framework for now.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the themes I just heard, I jotted down a couple of things, Kenny, that you just mentioned. Reparations, obviously, that Ray mentioned, equity indicators, and then home valuation. And then when I was kind of thinking about some of these things before the meeting, some other things that I think have come up regularly that would be themes is housing stability. Thinking about people's economic stability in order to pay rent, eviction policies, consumer protections, things that are making housing either stable for more people or less stable. I also thought about zoning. I guess the more I hear about it and the more I think about it, I do actually think that that's a pretty big deal and something that, the city, if it's really going to be a more equitable place, really needs to dig into and look at some pretty major changes, which I know is a heavy lift, but I think that that's just kind of the reality there. Measuring equity, like we talked about, a huge one again that's still really out there that was in the language of the founding of the commission period is gentrification and displacement as another theme. And then it's kind of like zoning. I think it maybe this is the next higher level, but like regulations and bureaucracy, like what kinds of regulations and what's the bureaucracy that is really limiting the housing supply that Tucson in particular is able to produce. So those are some of the other themes that are kind of were floating around in my head. Are there other themes that y'all can think of that we should highlight as things to like be looking for as we're looking through the various documents and whatnot between now and next meeting?
A couple other topics I would love to delve into public housing, especially as I'm not sure where we are in the timeline with the asset repositioning. But that's something that I think it would be great for this committee to be weighing in on how that's done. So public housing. And then the other theme that I would love to be working on as a committee is the what's the city about to do that it'll come back to me. A housing bond and different ways that cities have done affordable housing bonds, especially looking at this other piece of equity and ensuring that it's like really working for long-term affordable housing with that lens to not be fueling gentrification and to be a long-term and reparative process.
Yep. Kenny, any others that you can think of, any other themes that we haven't touched on right now that are popping up in your mind? Or
Yeah, and I guess the one I'm thinking of just sort of like the indicators, it's a little more broad or like kind of meta, is just our housing narratives. What's going to connect with folks that are within our community, and how have things been talked about? What are some other ways of shaping the narrative that other cities have really found effective to connect with people? Yeah.
mm-hmm.
I'm not really quite sure how to say it, but I read another article about the folks that are doing I don't even know what it's called, price matching or whatever's going on here in the state of Arizona. And I think that's related to evictions. So maybe putting evictions on the list, just because at one time, I don't know where we're at now, but at one time we had one of the highest rates of eviction in the countries. And, so many people unfortunately are never going to become homeowners. So we have to, have eviction as part of that conversation so that folks don't become unhoused.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Lori. I mean, yeah, the price matching or whatever, the cartel, I think that AG Mays described it as, the fact that there are these, larger forces, entities, corporations, private equity firms, what have you, that are, operating in, essentially unlawful ways, or at least ways that are damaging. And how does that play into what we suggest, and like, what can the city actually do about some of those things? So that's a good one. Any other themes? We've got about a half a dozen, I mean, about a dozen, I would say. And I can just go over what I have written down again to see, if anything else pops up. But I do like the idea of getting these themes out to everybody. I think we all have some resources that I've sent out. I'm sure folks have others. And I think as we're, looking through as many things as we can, trying to slot different things under these themes does seem like at least as good a way to start as any. At least that's kind of how I'm understanding y'all have described it. So just real quick, again, some of the themes that I've heard us talk about and some that I brought as well, all combined. Regulations and bureaucracy, housing stability, zoning, measuring equity, which is like indicators, I think, gentrification and displacement, reparations, again, indicators, which I think I mentioned, home valuation, public housing, particularly thinking about the asset repositioning in Tucson and Pima County, housing bond, housing narratives, and then evictions and the price matching and kind of maybe the super macro forces. Anything else come up for y'all when I read our list that we have of themes, or is that might be just good enough to go on for the time being? And any other themes that pop up, we could obviously add. Go ahead, Ray.
The other theme that there's already so much research happening in Tucson that I would love to just connect with the people at the UA who are doing this is the someone else is going to know this better than I do about the things that are written into the codes that were explicitly racist.
Oh, the covenants.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, the racist covenants project.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm especially interested in what their plan is for what they do with that information. Is like, yes, there's, I think, trying to remove the racist covenants, but are they looking to do any kind of repair too
Right.
with that? And could we be working in collaboration?
So I just wrote that down, Ray, is connect with research being done in Tucson to basically capture.
Yeah, and I would maybe name the Racist Covenants Project
Okay.
explicitly too. It'd be, I don't know if you all have already had them come to a meeting before. If not, it might be something worth doing.
Trying to remember if Jason has come. I know I've been to it. Go ahead, Neto.
No, I don't think he's attended a subcommittee or even the commission meeting. We did a town hall.
Right.
BCD did a town hall virtual forum, but no, Jason, I don't think he has. And it might be a nice idea, yes, to invite him to update. I know there was some legislation. I'll see if I can find the email from someone. Some legislation that's moved forward.
The legislation was actually passed and made law that basically allows people to, I think, take the racist language out of their paperwork when they're buying a new house.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Right. But Ray's also asking for maybe something more that I'm not aware of.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Right.
Certainly Jason could update us.
Yep. That'd be great. Okay. So I noted the Racist Covenants Project as well. Anything else, y'all, in terms of themes that would help us to start to, do our research and gather our thoughts as we work between now and next meeting? Or is that, I mean, it seems like a pretty darn good list to me.
Yeah, one other thing that I'm not sure exactly how this fits in, but the particular exploitation that's happening in mobile home parks, I'd like to bring in, and maybe it's just as broad as that, but I think there'll be a more specific focus that can come from that too.
Great. Got it. Anything else, y'all? Okay, so we've got our broad themes that we're gonna be kind of working with to, as we do our research between now and the next meeting. As far as like kind of how we structure our next meeting when we come together as a subcommittee, we've done our research and we've tried to, at least connect some of it to the themes that we just talked about. How should we structure the meeting? Like what should next meeting look like so that we're, able to share and like kind of move the ball down the road even more. I'd love to think that through a little bit before we get to the next meeting and be like, oh, what do we do now?
Are we allowed to communicate, let's say maybe via email between each other to kind of prepare for the meeting, like a week or two in advance?
Yeah, I believe so.
And when we're having an item on the agenda that's just like one by one update of what resources we're adding to the collective list and some key takeaways from those.
Okay, so share new resources, Ray,
Yeah,
and what's coming from them, and highlights or something like that from them. Okay. And highlights and maybe like if there's a connection to one of the big themes that we discussed. Maybe what we do, again, just thinking out loud here, but maybe we do just kind of like a roundtable where, we each just share anything new that we've come across that maybe wasn't, in the materials that have been sent out. And also any of the things that were reviewed that were already on the list of stuff that we have. Each person can maybe just, highlight the things that they looked at, whether it's new or, was on a previous list. And then again, the couple of major highlights, why the report was important or not. And then what the connections are to the big themes that we came up with. I don't know, what does that sound like? I'm, again, just totally thinking out loud here to kind of keep things going here.
I'm not sure I totally followed that last part. Do you mind explaining that once more?
Which part?
I got that we would do a share new resources on the next agenda and then add our highlights. I didn't get what you were saying after that.
Oh, I think I just said, and also connect whatever whatever reports or whatever you looked at, and whatever highlights came out of that for you in terms of equity issues. What major themes do those connect to that we outlined today? Our dozen themes. I think that was maybe the second part. Does that sound right? Okay.
I don't remember where we landed on this. Were we allowed to make a Google Doc?
I think that I think it was the issue was if it was external facing, in particular needing to be accessible. And I think we were struggling with how to make stuff accessible that way. I don't remember about sharing amongst ourselves, but I think that we kind of need to be able to do that. And if somebody needs a reasonable accommodation or some other accessibility assistance, we can do that if needed. But so I think we need to have something that we share. What do y'all think?
I was under the impression that we were talking about Google Doc, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ray, but it was like for us to kind of assist us all in planning together, right? That's how I do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we do a roundtable, we kind of share out. We, I think, highlight what we reviewed, the things that came out of that, connecting it to the major themes. Okay, so we do that next meeting, and then what? Like, once we do that, what do we want to have? Maybe what do we want to have completed, or like what's our kind of work product that we'd like to get to by the end of next meeting, so that we can, then figure out what more we need to do before we go to the full commission or come up with recommendations. What's our work product for next meeting, do you guys think? Is it just kind of the compilation and the themes that come out and the connections? Is that just kind of what we want to accomplish, or is there something else that we want to do with that when we do that? Does that make sense?
Well, I was thinking for me, leading up to the next meeting, I wanted to investigate, if you will, a couple of problems I might be able to identify that this subcommittee might be interested in approaching. But I'm going to need some time to pull that together. But that was my thought. I thought I had a couple of things I wanted to check with subcommittee members to see if this was a good idea for us to discuss or approach, or maybe it's different subcommittees.
Yep, that makes sense.
I kind of feel like just sharing what we've found, it will take a lot of kind of time. And I'm open to leaving open what what comes out of it. And beyond that, I think if there's some like takeaway that we could at least agree upon, like this is what these resources are all kind of pointing towards as like something actionable. Or if there's a particular thrust that points to like a gap in what we're seeing as actions being taken. And I don't know, there could be a number of, I think, different outcomes in my mind.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. So I guess the idea would be that we would just kind of do the roundtable thing and see where that leads us, and kind of decide at that point where to go. I'm totally fine with that as well. Does that resonate for everyone? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we've got a pretty good plan for between now and next meeting. Any other thoughts before I'm thinking we might be a good time to move on to agenda item number 6, but I certainly don't want to move on if people have more ideas about kind of what to do between now and next meeting, and what next meeting is going to look like and what we're trying to accomplish, and obviously anything else that we haven't covered, but just want to give one more opportunity before we move on to item number 6.
I just a couple things. I like this idea. I guess for myself, I would want to lean towards like kind of sharing with the group stuff that I've been able to review. But I also know that shouldn't be a barrier to like getting more kind of information at the table. So I don't know, I thought I just might share that. Want to try to review what I share with others, but if a resource sounds too important to leave out and we don't get the chance to do that, I think it's more important to share it with each other.
Yeah, agreed.
And then a couple of things. So along those lines, I think Tisha was sharing the Othering and Belonging Institute. I do know that they've come out with a pretty recent report that, again, I haven't had the chance to look through myself, on social housing in California. That looks quite promising. So I wanted to put that on the radar, as well as the work of Professor Lisa Bates up in Portland. I think to your interest, Ray, she's worked on preferences for I think LIHTC housing in neighborhoods where people may have been displaced from in the past. So I don't know if others have come across that work, but it's been on my radar. I haven't looked too much further into it.
Thanks, Kenny.
Yeah, if you can find that, I would love to read that. Otherwise, I'll search for it too.
Anything else, y'all, before we go to item number 6? All right, moving on, agenda item number 6, our action items. Let's see, I'm just seeing what else is on our agenda here. I mean, I think we basically kind of covered action items, right? I mean, I don't know, is there anything else, aside from this kind of core project that we're moving forward? Are there any other action items that we need to discuss? Okay. Moving on to number 7, any action items for the full commission? Go ahead, Neto.
No, I don't have anything.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm watching closely for you unmute her so I can snag you.
I'll be up in a moment.
Cool. Yeah, I can't think of any action items for the full commission. Can you guys at this point? Right.
Okay, I'm ready. Just a reminder, next week's commission meeting is hybrid, but hopefully most commissioners will be in person at the Housing First office on Irvington, next to the El Pueblo Neighborhood Center, where we will follow with the P-CHIP kickoff at El Pueblo Neighborhood Center. And as an incentive, there'll be food at the P-CHIP kickoff, not at the commission meeting. Food from St. Mary's Tortilla Factory. So
that's very sneaky, Neto, very sneaky. But I like it. It'll work.
Hey, Neto, just because, give me the date and time on that so I can just double check my calendar right now.
May 2nd is the commission meeting, 4 to 5:30, followed by the P-CHIP kickoff May 2nd, 5:30 to 7.
Yep, got it. Thank you.
Any other action items for CEHD? All right. Item number 8 is the call to the audience. This is a time when any member of the public may address the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development's Subcommittee on Equitable Housing Strategies. Due to time constraints, the total time allocated for this is 15 minutes. Individuals are allowed 3 minutes each. Due to open meeting law, Commission members cannot discuss topics that are not on the agenda. Items brought up by the public may be considered as an agenda item for a future meeting. Is there anybody in the audience to call to?
There is no one, Jay.
Okay. Number 9, next steps. So our next meeting is May 23rd at 1 p.m. And the CEHD meeting, as Neto mentioned, is May 2nd at 4 p.m. And what I'd like to do now is create a draft meeting agenda for our next meeting. I wonder if we need to change the agenda at all. I mean, I think number 5 really captures what we need to do, right? But I'm certainly open to, yeah, go ahead, Ray.
The meeting today was at 1:30. Is the meeting at 1 or 1:30 on the 23rd?
Good question. I was going to bring that up. So as Ray pointed out, yes, today's meeting's at 1:30. Future meetings are at 1 o'clock. So my question in logistic land is the subcommittees good with this Thursday in the month. And the question is, what do you want to meet at 1 or at 1:30?
Either's fine for me.
Either works. I might have been part of the wrinkle with my teaching schedule.
We're not pointing fingers.
So either moving ahead now that the term is wrapping, that should be fine for the foreseeable future.
1 or 1:30, Kenny?
Whichever this group has a preference for, I could accommodate both.
Okay, cool. Lori, what about you? Do you have any preference?
I have zero preference.
Okay. What
And
else?
you,
What
Carrie?
about what? No, as long as I have a little bit of, as long as I have some lead time, I can pretty much make that work. So.
Okay. And Mike doesn't count.
Oh, right.
So again,
Anymore, you mean, yeah.
okay, so I will send out a reoccurring calendar for 1 o'clock on this Thursday of the month.
Okay. What did y'all think about just keeping the agenda the same? Do you think we need to tweak it at all, or do you think it works? Go ahead, Kenny.
I thought the new format I think the whole commission is using looks it's something that's a little more digestible for me. So I don't know if others are in support of that. I thought that was a nice way of laying out things.
Is that what we're looking at now, or is that something different? I'm sorry, Kenny.
I think Kenny was referring to the full commission detailed agenda that we started creating.
Got it.
Correct, Kenny?
Yeah, and it has like, okay, is this deliberation or are we gonna make a decision on something? I found
Okay.
that helpful.
Yeah, again, that's the full commission detail agenda, not commission, not subcommittee agenda format.
Kenny, is there how could we do that? How could we do that for our subcommittee agenda to make it more like the full commission agenda that's more detailed? Is there something we could do differently with the agenda that we have, like the one that we're using today?
I find it helpful just like the chart somehow. But again, I don't know how accessible that actually is. So it doesn't need to be like in a chart necessarily, but some of that additional kind of, this is, yeah, formatting or something like that.
Neto, do you compose and compile the CEHD agenda?
I'm sorry, Mike, the question was,
Do you compose or compile the CEHD agenda?
Allison and I work on it, but in conjunction, we are now meeting with Jim and Jay prior to the commission meeting to discuss what items to put in the agenda. But essentially, it comes down to Allison and I formatting it in this new detailed format.
Can you cut and paste? I mean, in a sense.
Cut, paste, blast away. Yep.
Okay. Just curious.
Okay. As far as aside from the formatting of the agenda, is there anything else that we need to discuss or want to do at the next meeting that is not at least kind of captured in what the agenda for this meeting captures? So do we need to make any edits or adjustments to the agenda, or can we just carry this one forward for the next meeting, basically? I see some nodding. I don't hear any objections. So I'm going to take that as probably okay.
I think it looks good. I mean, maybe this part, one of the things was work plan for April, May, June. Maybe we change that to report backs from our learnings, something like that. But I thought the overall flow of it was great.
Work plan. So instead of work plan, we call it, okay. Yeah, like learnings. Yeah.
Yeah, sharing learnings. I think we said share new resources.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Any other tweaks, edits, additions? Okay. Where are we? The next bullet point under number 9 is to review the main points from our meeting today to report to the full commission. And I mean, I think in a nutshell, we just have talked about our work plan and what we're going to do at the next meeting. So I think that's pretty straightforward. I think I don't need a whole lot of help probably articulating that when the time comes. Anything else though that we want to share with the full commission? I just want to make sure that I don't miss anything or that we don't miss anything. Okay. And with that, y'all, it looks like we are done for the day. So if there's nothing else, I think we all have a good idea about what to do for the next meeting. Before we do wrap up, any other final thoughts, comments, questions?
Jay and Neto, I sent you a Google Doc with the notes.
Thanks, Ray.
If you want to take a look at it before you send it out to everyone, there might be little changes that are needed. Thank you.
Will do. All right, y'all. I don't hear any other things that people need to talk about. So with that, our meeting is adjourned. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your week and look forward to seeing y'all in May.
Thank you all.
Bye.